Remember this video? Yeah, I made this video while I was watching the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Columbus Blue Jackets Game 4. The game where they almost got eliminated, but they didn't because Mitch Marner was part of a big comeback that sparked an overtime victory, and the Maple Leafs eventually tied the series, but then they lost in Game 5. So this video was made during that game, or at least it was made immediately after that, because I was talking in that video about how Leafs fans, minutes before their big comeback, were sparking up on Twitter huge discussions as to whether or not it was time to trade Mitch Marner. Straight up, that's what we're talking about here, trading Mitch Marner. Because the big argument that everybody was talking about with Marner up until that point before they came back was, yo, Matthews, Tavares, these guys are doing well. These guys are contributing offensively. They're actually trying out there. But Mitch Marner is not. What is with this guy? We're paying him $11.8 million a year. It's the start of that huge contract, and this guy can't even buy us any offense. He's got 1 point in 3 games played so far up until this point, and he's shown nothing. What is this? It's time to trade him, because it's certainly not fitting over here. But he came back, he immediately scored 3 points, and for a good day and a half, pretty much, we had ourselves a calming of the masses when it came to the whole trade Andersen, trade Marner, trade Nylander talks. Sure, there was still some pessimism going around and some cynicism to go around too, but ultimately the Leafs tied up the series. They had one more shot to advance to the the first round of the playoffs and take out the Columbus Blue Jackets once and for all. Lo and behold, that didn't happen. They lose Game 5 in another shutout. And at this point, all that stuff that we talked about with Mitch Marner before the comeback in Game number 4, it started to bring itself up again. And now, if you go onto Twitter and you search the words trade Marner, you'll see new tweets coming out every other minute with hypothetical Marner trades, why it's time to do it, whether or not the Leafs should pull it off, and whether or not the fan base would like it. For the most part, there's been a few parties that have been talking about this, and it's been further discussed even more on Toronto radio. One of the things that sparked this forward, though, was a few quotes that Mitch Marner had on the 5-game series itself. Here's a tweet from Terry Koshin of the Toronto Sun from 2 days ago. This is what Marner said on the 5-game series. He felt like he was getting better as it went on. The first game, I wasn't engaged at all. Then, of course, if we go to the fuller quote, because that does kind of frame it some kind of way, I felt like I was getting better throughout every game. I felt like the first game I wasn't engaged at all in physicalness or in the play at all. From that point on, I felt like I got a lot more engaged. Now, this tweet right here, the initial Marner on his 5 games I wasn't engaged tweet, got 71 retweets and 37 likes. I came across this because there was a tweet made by a man named Sergey who quote-tweeted this, and his tweet popped off, 329 likes, and it was quoting this Marner quote over here. Mitch Marner can blank right off. He admits to not being engaged for Game 1. Nobody will criticize you for not producing, but you better be engaged for a playoff game if you're making $11 million a year. You know who was engaged? Auston Matthews was engaged. And this tweet right here is kind of why I'm even making this video in the first place, because tweets like this, talking about how Marner wasn't engaged and why he needs to be engaged because he's so expensive, as well as other discourses that I've been seeing on platforms like Reddit and elsewhere on Twitter, it's really brought the idea to my head that what Leaf fans want is a Marner trade. Not because Marner is bad per se, but because the fit that Marner has with this Maple Leafs team just isn't sufficient enough to get them over that hump. Matthews ain't the problem. He's the guy that was working his butt off every single game against Columbus. Tavares, he has a no-move clause, so you can't even really trade him if you wanted to. And he was pretty good too. He hit the post in game number 5. But this Leafs team, again and again, with a roster that has 3 forwards combining for a higher amount of cap than the entire Columbus Blue Jackets forward core, this team has been up and away a failure. And it's a failure not because Marner can get points and Matthews can get goals and Tavares can get points and this team can do well in the regular season, but because year after year after year in the Matthews era, it's first-round loss after first-round loss after first-round loss after not even making the postseason, or at least they're in the postseason, but they're not in the playoffs. I remember a time when the playoffs and the postseason could be considered the same thing. Not so much anymore, though. But now, the Leafs are in a position where they need a change. They need a big, big change to signify that they're taking a new direction. Because keeping up with the same forward core, the same D core, and the same goalie core heading into the future is something that has been proven to not work. It's not working. Over the past 4 seasons, it has not worked. And now, when it comes to the big moves out of big moves that the Blue Jackets have forced the Leafs to make, a Marner trade is the one that most people have opened up to, in my opinion. So, is it time to do that? Is it time to trade Marner? And if so, what exactly are you going to trade him for? Because I'll tell you this, Mitch Marner's $10.8 million was hard to move a year ago. Or at least, not even a year ago. A year ago, he didn't even have the contract, but he was really, really difficult to move even before the flat cap was announced. Now, teams are in a position where $10.8 million sounds like the worst thing that could be added onto their organization. So unless you're willing to eat up extra salary from other teams, there does not seem to be a valuable Marner trade candidate that would even exist in today's NHL market. Furthermore, and this is a point made by Will Scouching on his most recent Scouching episode, the Leafs are not in a position of power here when it comes to Mitch Marner trade negotiations. Marner is the guy that the Leafs will call other teams about, because other teams know that Marner is under flack because he spoke to the media about he wasn't engaged in Game 1. Other teams know that the Maple Leafs are not in a good spot right now and that they would need to go forward with a big change. Because of that, all the negotiating power goes with other teams. It's the Maple Leafs here who are desperate, and the Maple Leafs here who need to make their own move. It gives other teams the ability to play hardball if the Leafs come asking for a good player in exchange for Marner. No, Kyle Dubas, I'm not trading my Miro Heiskanen for Mitch Marner. You can take this package of picks and prospects instead. No, Kyle Dubas, I am not trading my number 1 Alexis Lafreniere prospect for Mitch Marner. Because Marner is more than just a hockey player here. He is the embodiment of what was one of the worst contract negotiations we've seen in a very long time, that was publicly leaked to the media, and a representation of one guy trying to build himself up towards being this incredibly lovable figure amongst Toronto sports. While being in tons and tons of different commercials, he's on the ice not really producing. Taking up, 1/8 of the entire team's salary cap? He is one of the highest paid players in the league, so he better produce like it. And fans are coming out and talking about how he didn't. And it's kind of crazy to me just how pretty much an entire city's fan base turned on one guy over the span of about a week. And I know it shouldn't be surprising since Toronto is probably the biggest and the most bipolar fan base in all of hockey, but at the same time, because it's a topic that has been gaining traction, I feel like it's only necessary to talk about it. Although, it's just difficult, you know? It's really difficult because of the fact that everybody knows that Marner is in a position where the fan base wants him out, or that Andersen is in a position where the fan base is debating on if it's time to trade him. The Maple Leafs have absolutely no negotiating power here when it comes to trade proposals, so it's going to be difficult. But at the same time, I honestly would not be surprised if it got done quickly, because we do know how when Kyle Dubas wants something, hey, he gets it done. And I know he's been defending Marner publicly, much to the dismay of other Leafs fans, but behind the scenes, there probably has to be at least something going on, discussing options, because this Maple Leafs team, after getting eliminated from the postseason for the 4th time in a row, pretty much, it's just, certainly not favorable, especially when you're in a win-now kind of mode, with 3 of the most expensive players in the entire game. So, now that this video is over, talk to me in the comments what you thought about this video topic, and whether or not you believe it's time to trade Marner. Would you trade Marner? Should the Leafs trade Marner? And furthermore, if the answer to any of those questions is yes, what would you trade Marner for? And furthermore, what do you think would actually be valuable enough for the other team to say yes? Because I think most teams would not offer what would be their best defenseman for Mitch Marner. But on the other hand, it's not like the Leafs would say yes to any other deal that would come their way otherwise. So, talk to me in the comments below what you think about this idea. I hope you enjoyed this video. So, that's Troll99, and bye.